All right, I've compared what's been going on right under our noses to something I know a lot about: breakdowns and automotive maintenance. And one thing I know about breakdowns and people in general is they like to look the other way and pretend that everything's okay, even though things are falling apart all around them. And the video series that I'm doing now is to try and avoid that. Like counseling a customer who doesn't think their car is breaking down, but needs it explained to them exactly how it is and what's going to happen if they don't take action. And the seriousness of the expense if they don't. I used to watch football. I used to be into racing. But I don't do that anymore. It doesn't hold my interest. Because as far as I'm concerned, something far more important has came up. Because if we don't get our shit together and understand what goes on around us, we're heading towards a big accident. One that could cost us all dearly. So let's review the game board and how this is all set up. The deep state and or the New World Order are inseparable because one leads to the other. There's no other way to look at it. And the rat fink here represents the deep state. But in order for it to work properly, you have to have the right people installed in the right positions. That's why the Democrats hate Donald Trump so much. Because their candidate, if you recognize the car, Cruella de Vil, didn't get elected into office. Because it was her job to stab America in the back, to put on the finishing touches, to enter us into the system that we all see in bits and pieces in this world today.
Must share this live link and say, hey, did you hear they're admitting in court abortionists and the sellers of baby parts that they're keeping babies alive?
Did you hear that?
Isn't that a big deal?
They've admitted in open court that they're keeping babies alive so that they can sell their pieces.
Saying, oh, the doctors and the
Is it just a coincidence that our game board, at least from the inside, lays out like a pentagram? But I digress. Okay, why does the left hate Donald Trump so much? Because Cruella de Vil didn't get elected. He did. And like it or not, when you hold the office of president, you're in control of the deep state. Because on its own, the rat fink has no power. It takes all of this pentagram looking thing to make it run.
Remember, you're supposed to kill the baby in the vaginal canal under law.
All right.
You're supposed to suck the brains
when Donald Trump got elected, it screwed with their power structure and what they were trying to do. Like I said, they wanted Cruella de Vil. And because they didn't get her, that sparks a lot of their outrage. Let's review how this actually works. You have the judicial, the legislative branch, of course,
it's unbelievable.
damn it, I forgot what it is now. The executive branch and the intelligence agencies. That's the inner core of the deep state power structure. And around the outside, you have the alphabet agencies. And this outer ring, you might as well call the henchmen of the New World Order, are the media companies for the most part. Google, Apple, Facebook, Twitter, Microsoft. And let's not forget the deep state dinosaur media and a couple others, which for this purpose don't necessarily need a name, but we all know they're there. These are the ones that are the buffer between them and us. This outer ring of who we will call, for our purposes, the patriots, or the people that represent the interests of the people. And we've all seen demonstrations through the mainstream media of how they try and control the narrative, push false stories, and have the public believe one thing while there's actually something else going on. We've all seen Google and YouTube institute policies to try and control the narrative for the public and scare them away from what they fear the most, truth. We've all seen Twitter, piss poor representation of Twitter, but anyways, ban people for their political speech and ideas and so forth and so on. And this goes on in some aspect or another around this outer circle. Now I'll get into why they fear the truth so much. In order to roll on this team, you have to be into what they're into. And the guy in the background actually is talking about it right now. And what they're into is so outrageous that most people would turn away from it or wouldn't believe it in the first place. And they do that intentionally too, to try to keep people off the trail, keep them off balance, and from looking into all of this. Now, all of these outside cars represent people who have had dealings with big tech, social media, news agencies, and so forth and so on. And they represent a lot of knowledge and skill in how to disassemble or take apart this established organization. And the first thing they did was take on the intelligence agencies. And when they did that, they took the CIA out of the picture right away and greatly reduced the power of the FBI. Might we have lost one of our own along the way? Certainly. But the power structure was weakened, even though it would appear that they still have one of their people at the top. He's basically powerless. He might be able to affect a few things, meaning Director Wray, but the power that they had over the employees at the FBI has been greatly reduced. And to have one of their people still in in a position of power is a great way to gather intelligence, because they're going to make mistakes, they're going to do things outside the norm that exposes this organization more. So we'll turn each car pointing the other way every time something happens. And then, as far as the FBI goes, there have been more firings from the upper echelons of the FBI during the Trump administration than I've ever seen in my lifetime. And I have been a half-ass fan of politics all of my life. So for those of you who would take the attitude that nothing's being done, I would beg to differ. But in order to inform the public and teach the rest of us about what's been going on, it's been moving at a very slow pace. Because for the most part, the public doesn't give a shit. That's how we got into this mess in the first place. They just figure that things are the way they are, that Washington is corrupt, and that's just the way it is. And will not accept the fact that everything changed when Donald Trump got elected.
Is very, very simple. That's why. The term, my friends, too big to fail. Well, it's certainly true in many respects, and those institutions always get more and more out of control until they bring down the entire civilization. But more dangerous than too big to fail is too evil to believe.
You're damn right.
And that's really what it comes down to.
All right, the next
I remember growing up in Dallas.
aspect of what's been going on right under our noses
Not just as an innocent oral surgeon, but he
was the judicial arm of the government.
in Mesquite, Texas, with one other partner. She's pretty successful.
It should be pretty obvious to anybody who's been paying attention, and I hope it's more than I think, that the way the judicial system has operated has changed quite a bit since Donald Trump got elected. Does it still seem, in some ways, that it's still operating like it has? You're damn right it does. And that's by design. Because in order to take down this Derby team that has basically subverted our government, you have to make them think that they're still in control. And in order to do so, you have to move at a slow pace as well. Because the longer they think they're in control, the more intelligence you're able to gather. Because we don't get to operate like they do. We have laws, we have procedures, we have cases to build. And that's just the way it is. They get to make the shit up as they go along because they don't give a shit about the law. And for the most part, that's where we're at in the dismantling of the deep state. Next is going to be cleaning out the legislative branch. And that's why Congress is in such disarray. That's why they aren't doing anything except for trying to get Donald Trump. Because it's all they care about. Because the shit that you have to do, like I said before, in order to roll with these people, is so outrageous that most people aren't prepared to believe it. That most people don't want to believe that people are capable of such a horrible existence, of looking at other human beings as pawns to use however they want to suit their own pleasure, profit, or goals. And it's written all over the Democratic platform for the candidates that are running for president. Because providing health care to illegal aliens for free is not in our best interest. That's in someone else's best interest. And I could go on and on about the export of U.S. jobs to China, open borders, and so forth and so on. But I think that's a subject for another video, because this board is complicated and this game is far from over. And it has to be played out by like a game, because it's a game that got us into this mess, and unfortunately it has to be played like a game to get us out, because the stakes are just too high. And the reason things are moving so slowly is because so much of the American public is still asleep. Because so many people want to go with the narrative that's being fed to them by the agencies that are still in place. Would I do this differently? Yeah, I probably would. But you know what? Just driving in and crashing into everybody might not necessarily be the best thing for everyone involved.
These are monsters. They tell you they're the left, they're the liberal, they're the bleeding heart, they're the good guy. As they open the gates of hell, this nation is facing judgment. Even if you don't believe in God, and you allow these type of corruptions to go on, and you don't stand up for others, nobody's going to stand for you.